Yes, I'm sure for everyone, when they hear the issue about, our crude oil production is declining, it's definitely a source of worry for them because when we discovered oil, a lot of people thought that, that was our liberation. We're going to get a lot of money. And in a few years' time, you will not even recognize Ghana. You'll be walking in Ghana and you think that, this is some part of the UK. As to whether we have lived up to that, it's another conversation. So which of you would take this? Why exactly is our crude oil production declining? Which of you would take it?
Okay. So maybe I'll start and
then your colleague will continue.
Will also chip in.
That's fine. Right.
So actually, it's due to a myriad of factors. Let's put it that way.
Okay, such as
and it can be both internal and external.
Okay.
Internally, it could be, for instance, due to regulatory issues. It could also be due to technical issues on the field.
It could be, or it is due to.
So that is why tomorrow we'll be meeting, right? to have the conversation.
That's why
right?
I said that there's a high probability they'll save the answers for tomorrow. Okay, so it could be.
No, so I mean, like if you go through our reports, for instance, PIAC publishes semi-annual reports, annual reports every year, and we highlight some of these issues in the report. Of course, there are some regulatory issues that impinge on the commercial production of oil on the various fields that we have.
Okay.
Others too are very technical in nature, just because of maybe the particular field that you're operating on. You encounter a very technical challenge that does not allow you to evacuate all the volume of oil that ordinarily you would have.
Okay.
And of course, on the global front, for instance, there's this conversation around energy transition, and essentially what that does is that we are seeing climate change happening. And one of the ways that we contribute to the acceleration of the climate change is through the emission of CO2. CO2 comes from fossil fuels, for instance, of which crude is one of those contributors. So globally, there is a sort of a retraction away from investing in projects that necessarily involves fossil fuels, such as crude oil.
Okay.
So perhaps that may also be a contributory factor to it. But again, whether what they call the transition is going to be a gradual transition or a steep transition happening at once, it's a conversation that is still happening within the global space.
Okay.
So when you put all of these factors together, perhaps that may also be contributing to the trend that we are seeing locally. Okay. And we don't have the answers as PIAC alone.
That is why you're having
we're having this consultative conversation.
Fantastic.
Perhaps my executive secretary will also want to add some to it as well.
So in addition to what he said, from 2010, December 15, since production began, all the way to 2015 and part of 2016, Ghana only produced from the Jubilee field. So the producing field was one. Then we had the second field added, that is the Cheneboa and Yira and Tome field added. So we had two producing fields. Then in 2017, we had a third field added, except that the third field is primarily a gas field with oil as more like a byproduct, to use a non-technical language. Okay. So usually the life cycle of a field is about 20, 25, at most 30 years. Jubilee field has been producing since December 2010. So if you do the numbers from 2010 all the way to 2023, you are talking about 13 years, which should mean that we are around the midlife of the field. And usually by now the field will have plateaued and will have begun declining. So it is not surprising that production on Jubilee would begin to show some decline. But that
is where maybe the new fields also would come in.
Exactly the point, because this is a finite resource, and as one field declines, new ones are added on stream to keep you always afloat, to keep the numbers high, to keep the revenue high. Because revenue is a function of production and price. And incidentally, production is what you have control over. So if the one you have control over, you are losing the game, then it means that the one you have no control over, which is price, you are going to lose entirely, and revenue is going to keep dipping.
And what is inhibiting us from getting new fields? Because, not to play politics, but this is something you hear consistently in the political discourse. You hear the camp of the NDC say that since we left, this government hasn't added any other well to what we have at the moment. So, what exactly is inhibiting? Let's take out the politics from there. The fact remains is that we are struggling in terms of getting the new wells to go on. What exactly is happening in that area?
Okay. So, again, it's a matter of just investments, right? Being able to attract investors to bring in their money.
Okay.
And then we can be able to start these projects, and then eventually we can get to the commercial production stage. And that is what we have not seen happening in the last few years. I think our last PA was in 2018. So PA is a petroleum agreement, right? That gives the right or the way for a project to start.
Okay.
The last one that we signed was in 2018, and since then we've not signed any new agreement, and so that is why we are seeing
the decline,
and because new projects are not coming on stream. So, like you rightly explained, this is the thrust of the conversation we want to have from tomorrow, which is Wednesday and Thursday, just to be able to have a better sense of, from the investor's perspective, why is it that we are not having any new inflows of investments coming from them. Of course, they are going to have the regulators also in the meeting room and then other stakeholders. Then we can all brainstorm and find out a good solution to this particular problem that we are having. Because like you and I agree, this resource is finite, but the resources, again, that we get out of it in terms of revenue is critical to our country. So if it should just taper off, as we are seeing now, it spells doom for all of us. So that is why we are all quite excited about tomorrow's event, because it gives us the opportunity
to have a frank conversation,
to have good conversations with everybody involved to see how best we can turn the tide around.
Okay. If I recall correctly, I'm not an out-and-out oil and gas person, so pardon my ignorance. But if I recall correctly, we had a key sector player like ExxonMobil exit our market. What did that do to, us being an option for investors?
Okay, so usually you're looking at the ripple effect not only on of the player exiting, but then the message it sends to other potential investors. Because you know that Exxon is one of the big boys in the industry.
Absolutely.
And when one of them gets into your basins and for some reason they are unable to do work which will result in a find and production, then a certain kind of signal is sent.
Okay.
I wanted to say that one of the views expressed by some industry observers regards to causes of lack of investment, it's the inconsistent application of policy and law by government.
By government, okay.
Yes, which is what may have made the industry not very comfortable for players.
Okay.
As to whether it is the cause of the decline and the reduction in investments, we will go into that in the meetings tomorrow. And Thursday, with a view to not assigning blame, but going down to find the real cause and then finding solutions to it, because we want to come out of the program with workable solutions.
Absolutely.
What will incentivize change and see Ghana's oil revenues go up. You know, the best of times we have had oil revenue contribute about 10% of total government revenue in a particular year. On the average, we've had about 7 to 8% of government revenue being from petroleum revenue. So if it is as much as 7%, then it is very significant, and due attention should be given to it to find solution to the issues you're talking about.
And then again, for instance, when we set up GNPC, the long-term goal was that we would invest whilst we bring in the foreign partners to bring it, because they had the capital and the equipment to extract the crude oil and all that. One of the major aims was that we will also empower GNPC to the point where they can go ahead and drill some of these fields and all that. How are we faring with that?
Okay, so of course, like rightly pointed, that was the plan. So when we found our first oil on the Jubilee field, what we did was to have them as a partner in the production of oil on the Jubilee field.
Yeah.
And in the law, we set a sunset clause for them that by a certain number of years, of course, then the state will stop funding them, so to say. I think we have, how many years more do you have? About a year or two?
2026.
Yeah. So about, they
have 2 years more.
Yeah, about 2 years more.
You exclaimed.
So about 2 years more. But currently, the arrangement is that the state funds them. And we are hoping that they'll have that kind of capacity over time.
2026. They have 2 years.
They have 2 years more. But of course,
do you see potential?
Of course.
You see potential?
No, but you see, currently, let's give them the kind of credit they deserve. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Currently, they are working on an onshore field,
Okay.
what we call the Votian Basin.
Yes.
That is where they are working now on their own at doing the exploration with the hope that eventually they're also going to strike commercial oil and then they can go into production on their own. So if they get to that stage and they want to bring in a partner, then they can also bring in a partner. So
Okay.
I would say it may be too early to make a judgment call on them. At least they have about a certain number of years. Let's see what's going to happen.
We'll give them the
All right?
benefit of the doubt.
Precisely.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to tease out all the answers here because I'm getting curious the more and more we have the chat. So you have the consultative meeting tomorrow. Who are the participants? Mr. Dramina,
Yes. So the consultative workshop
kindly speak into your microphone.
takes place. Thank you. Takes place tomorrow and Thursday. The program starts at 9 with an opening session that is open to more or less non-technical public.
Okay. So that's where the media is invited.
Exactly. 21 media houses invited to be able to let the public know what is happening, and other stakeholders, government and private CSOs, all invited. But then beyond the opening, we enter the technical session where we dive deep into the issues with engineers, geophysicists, geologists, economists, lawyers, all come together to look at the issues in their entirety. And then we go the next step further of finding the solutions to the issues. So tomorrow we have the opening, which ends at 10:30, and then we enter the technical sessions that end on the 2 at 12 midday. And then we enter the closing session, which will seek to present highlights of the discussions, the technical discussions that will have been going on. A communique is intended to be presented to the public and then to duty bearers, Ministry of Energy, the government, the parliament, so that they will all come to the table to see to implementing some of the workable recommendations that will emanate from the workshop.
All right. So you are confident that after this meeting, you'd have some good material to work with and also give to government to implement where necessary to boost our fortunes.
Yes. That's our strong expectation of tomorrow's engagement as well as that of Thursday.
Okay.
Once we are putting the best brains in the country together, naturally, we should come out with good solutions for the country as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us in the studio, and we wish you all the best tomorrow. Why are you smiling, Mr. Dramina?
Well, I'm optimistic that it will produce the results.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm equally optimistic.
Hopefully, we'll come back and not have a conversation about declining crude
Exactly.
oil.
You know, it's because it's getting worrying that we are recording that because we are also recording a decline in our cocoa production, and we are seeing an upsurge in our gold production, but at the detriment of our environment. So, what exactly are we doing to improve the situation? So, thank you once again, gentlemen, for joining us
All right, thank you.
on
Thank
the
you very
Morning
much for
Star.
having
Okay,
us.
so I had in the studio Christopher Poku Nyako, member of PIAC, as well as Isaac Dramina. He's also the coordinator of PIAC. And tomorrow, they have a consultative meeting. They want to understand why our crude oil production is declining. I'm sure they know the answers already, but still, it's good for a conversation. It's still the Morning Star here on Star 103.5 FM.